Carol talks about your ADD superpowers. We're going to be bringing Carol on in just a moment. But each and every one of you are sat on a mountain of value that will create a ripple effect when you get super, super, super laser focused on that. I'm just so excited to see all of you amazing ripple makers make such incredible waves. So let's get our final ripple maker extraordinaire up onto the stage. The amazing Carol Vincie is just phenomenal. Like, when you think of the words consistency and persistency, I think it would have Carol Vincie written in the dictionary right next to those two things. Carol has been part of, she was part of the Brand Builders Club. We met when I spoke at an event in Orlando, I think back in about 2018, and we happened to be launching the Brand Builders Club in New York the very next week. And so we met in Orlando, we flew over to New York, and Carol happened to be at the event that we ran. She bought a ticket to it, came along, joined Brand Builders Club, building her brand. And then when we became Ripple Makers, Carol was the founding member. She was the very first person at RippleFEST. In fact, I think Carol is the only person from RippleFEST 1 that has been there through every single one. Even when she had an operation, she had a fall and had a massive operation on her shoulder, she was still there every day, 2 a.m. her time, because we didn't used to have a 3 p.m. call. I've put them in now because we've got so many people from the States and Canada that I show up now twice a day, but I didn't before. And so Carol has been showing up 2 a.m. her time to join us at 7 o'clock in the morning every day for the last nearly 18 months. That is persistence, that is consistency, and that's why this amazing ripple maker is making ripples. Now, I'm going to bring her on, and I really want to share with you that if there's a part of you, I think actually the 3 speakers that you've heard from tonight, it's like, create the dream, find out what your dream is. What is that ripple, that dream that you want to have for you, not just the ripple you want to make for others, but what's the dream life you want, so the ripple that you make can provide that for you. But there might be parts of you that want to hide back because of shame or guilt, as our lovely Anya was just talking about. Well, Carol had many years of that, having been undetected for ADHD for, we were going to get her on in a minute, but I think it was well into Carol's 60s before she was diagnosed with ADHD. And as a result of her going through her whole life, burning herself out, thinking that she's not good enough, she's not fast enough, everyone else, like, I can't keep up, she's thinking she can't keep up, and everyone else is going, fucking hell, will she slow down? But that is why Carol has this strong message for the world, because there are so many people with ADHD who are, especially highly successful business women, and they're the people that Carol works with, who are living in shame and terror with the fear, just like she had, of being exposed, of what if somebody finds out. And as Carol herself, she called herself defective and stupid. But she knows that there are so many millions of other women that are running a business who have ADHD that are not using that superpower to their ADDvantage, as she calls it. So as you know, like, Carol struggled for decades throughout her corporate career, built a massive corporate career, and many different entrepreneurial ventures, but working twice as hard to get only half of the results because she wasn't tapping into those superpowers. But then she clapped out on the weekends, living in isolation. I mean, must know what that's like, as Lisa said, going to work, working, and not doing something that really fulfills your passion. It's been about 2 years of me twisting Carol's arm to really own the ADD brand, and finally she's relented. She's on a mission. She is just absolutely amazing in what she's doing. Guys, give it up for the amazing Carol Vincie. I love that you are our grand finale of day 1, my darling. Give us a Carol in the comments. Carol, my goodness, I mean, what a journey you've been on. But first of all, there was like the shame and feeling like there was something wrong with you, feeling like you always had to keep up, but everyone else, in fact, was trying to keep up with you. But you had this, and then you also had this element of yourself that then was like, oh, but I don't really want to share this with the world. What would your advice be to people like you who have this amazing gift and superpower, but you're too scared to get out there and do it? Do you have any advice for them?
Sammy, when we first spoke about this, I told you I would have admitted to killing somebody before I would have admitted to having ADD. And I'm serious about that. It was, it just was such a deep and intense feeling that it's hard to imagine now what it was back, when we first had our first conversation, when you did the initial call to make sure that I was the appropriate candidate for the Brand Builders Club. And we got through almost the entire call. And in the last 5 minutes, I mentioned, oh, by the way, and you went, oh my God, that's your unique skill. And I resisted. I absolutely could not bring myself to talk about it. I had actually self-diagnosed when I was at a conference, and the guy who was hosting the meeting was talking to his senior management team saying, I have 3 very ADHD male entrepreneurs here, and I want you to pay close attention and understand their gifts, because if you have someone on your staff who has these same characteristics and you don't treat them properly, which means we don't conform to normal corporate standards, we don't show up at the 9 to 5 kind of thing, they're going to leave, work for our competitors, and we will never catch up. And I sat there going, oh my God. And I have to credit, I had some instinct of self-preservation, I guess is the best way to describe it. Because when I was like 3 or 4 years old, my nickname was Bunny, because given a choice between a raw cucumber and a piece of candy, I chose the cucumber because I realized the candy didn't make me feel good. Now,
wow.
This is going back long before nutrition was even a concept, let alone on the tip of anybody's tongue. I just had that instinct. And then, during my corporate life, there were certain things, like if I had to write 3 lines of code, I worked in the IT field, information technology. If I had to write 3 lines of code, I would have brought the system crashing down. I had absolutely no ability to do that. And in the training course that I went to, I actually plagiarized those coding assignments from my study group because I couldn't do the simplest program. My brain just didn't work that way. But I was in a company that was growing very rapidly, so you had the opportunity to wiggle your way into something that you felt comfortable with. And God only knows how I knew that, but I started doing project design work. And now they didn't teach organizational development when I went to college. I mean, that was something that evolved over time, but that was my core skill. And yet, I still had this fear of, what if they found out? What would they do? I mean, they would have fired me if they had known that I plagiarized my work assignments.
Yeah.
Because that's a lack of integrity. And so I carried that around of, for the first 7 years, my job was more technical than sales or management. And so I carried that fear around continuously. And yet there were things that just came so naturally. Like I remember the first project, I had 6 people working for me. And I never went home at night pulling my hair out going, what are we going to do tomorrow? It just flowed. It was obvious. It was, and it was fun.
It's almost like I can imagine like the Da Vinci Code or Mission Impossible, where you're just looking at it and going, well, that makes sense, and you've solved the problem while everybody else is still around the board table trying to thrash it out, because the
yes.
superpowers that you have.
Yes, and I would joke that I had the dots connected before most of my colleagues could even figure out what the dots were.
But I mean, there's all these millions of women around the world who have ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed, but maybe they are also struggling with things that they think, why can't I just do the simplest things? Maybe if that's happening to somebody out there, and especially if you're running a business and there's certain things that you just think, I just can't do this, why isn't it making sense to me? Then there's potentially I'm assuming that there's different spectrums of ADHD, but it might be that something like that is undiagnosed in other people as well. Would you say?
Absolutely. And what I'm attempting to do is to get people to, I've created 3 steps: awareness, what actually is our behavior, and then putting things in the category of, I couldn't do that if my life depended on it, like my ability to write code, right? And not try. The mistake that people make is to appear normal, is that, particularly for women where there's the role expectations, that we're the one who keeps the track of everybody in the household's birthdays and anniversaries, and the mother-in-law's gifts, and the kids' school schedules and sports and dance classes. And yet with ADHD, that's not something we do well. I mean, we're struggling to keep ourselves on track, let alone the community of people. And so, acknowledge that I need help with that, and either find a neighbor who can help or somebody in the household, and then focus really on what your strengths are. And today, with what's called virtual assistants, VAs, they're people who typically deal with the detail stuff that is beyond our reach. So, I say awareness is just start making those lists. And then acceptance, which was the part that I struggled with when you pointed out that could be a unique characteristic. I wasn't prepared to accept it. And I wasn't even in a position until the last month or so to be able to remember how I made that transition, because it happened, but I struggled with, how can I be patient with people who want to work with me for that transition if I can't remember my own journey? And so that was really important. So there's acceptance. And then the third A is action. Now you can choose to do something or you can choose not. But the acceptance is the piece that relieves the stress and the trauma and the shame. And, and I say my adrenals are so shot, they're never going to probably never recover in the rest of my life. But the acceptance takes a lot of that pressure off. And I spoke to somebody at one of the recent face-to-face networking meetings, and I was talking about what I did, and she said, well, I'm also ADHD, but I never talk about it because it's nobody's goddamn business. Well, but that's your choice. That's the action that you choose to take. But the awareness of, your choice and your, the skills that you do have that you want to highlight, because that's what I was able to manage, what turned out to be a very successful corporate career, was by knowing what came easily to me and what I was comfortable with and what I excelled at. Because I had people say, well, how can you stand up in front of a very high pressure, high level corporate group, where I was pitching, I was hosting a program for, IBM's top 40 clients. And they said, you just were able to transition from one presentation to another, even when the presenters weren't in agreement on strategy. And that was something that just comes easily to me.
Comes naturally to you. And so what I love is that you've created this incredible ADHD, I'm just reading it here, performance co-pilot planner. Actually, I'm just going to put that in the chat there. Hopefully that will go up there. So you've got a planner that you've created that is basically the processes that you used for yourself to make things so much easier for you, so that you could be on time, so you could be structured, so that you could create more space and certainly more headspace and accept the things that need to be done. And so Carol, just very quickly, because we've got like 60 seconds left,
okay,
is to just tell us a little bit about your journey, I suppose, as a brand builder and as a ripple maker. What would you say to other people who are sitting on the fence, not sure whether they should dive in or not?
Well, one of the reasons that I was so consistent is that isolation that I had subjected myself to. And this was such a safe environment that I was able to, and it was tiny steps. I mean, it wasn't like, one leap forward. It was microscopic movements, but it was an environment that I gradually became comfortable with, and finally was able to step out of all that fear and shame and isolation. And that was very important to me. I mean, that was really critical in my personal development. Because without that, I would have stayed hidden.
Well, it's having a safe container, isn't it? It's having the ability to be able to speak in front of others, knowing that there's no judgment, there is only pure love, and everybody's love for each other, which is sometimes tough. It's sometimes hard love. And it's not easy to be on the receiving end of that. And sometimes I have to do that as well. I had to do a little bit of that in today's afternoon mastermind session. But everything is done through love. And the thing is that, if you aren't letting go of the things that are holding you back, then you can't grow forward with the things that you want to do. So I love, Carol, that you've been a massive part of this journey. You've literally seen the things that I'm birthing from scratch, and now you're out there doing it for yourself. Guys and girls, I've just put a link to Carol's ADHD planner there in the comments. So make sure you look in the comments. If you know somebody that you think might have ADHD, please do share it with them. Please, just go out on social media. Hey, I saw this amazing woman speak at RippleFEST tonight. If you are a businesswoman with ADHD, there's an incredible planner that the amazing Carol has designed. Please help her to share the message. And let's get that message out there. Carol, I'm so proud of you. Well done.
Thank you so much.
You are so very welcome.